this point, Dick Hayward felt terrified and broke out in a cold sweat in front of that figure. But Simon was very composed and asked, "We'd like to stay in this room with you. Would that be okay?" Suddenly, the white-haired student with a body full of scars turned around and looked at the two people with a very gloomy and scrutinizing expression. He glared at them with a terrifying look and said, "New student." Immediately, the atmosphere at this moment became gentle. He turned around and scratched his head and continued to say, "I see. Today was the matriculation ceremony. Time flies by, huh? You don't need to be so polite. I'm also a first grader after all." Simon respectfully replied while this dude Dick was still scared. "Oh, okay. Then Mr. Kajan." "Drop that. Just call me Kajan," Kajan interrupted and turned away, scratching his head in annoyance. "I don't know how long you two are gonna last in this school, but keep two things in mind. First, don't meddle in my business. Second, don't make a fuss before I go to bed. Once I'm asleep, you can dance, sing, or do whatever you want to do." "Oh, so, then you're letting us stay here?" Simon confirmed once more, while Kajan just wanted to go back to sleep and said, "It doesn't matter, does it? Someone's gonna come here if there's no empty room left." As soon as he finished his sentence, he fell asleep in front of the astonishment of the two dudes. After greeting each other, the two went outside to confirm with the dorm manager that they would take this room. She confirmed once more and Simon said it was okay because he thought the guy inside was not a bad person. Then with a worried expression, she instructed, "Okay, if you have any issues later on, please don't hesitate to let me know. I'll immediately report the case to the dorm master to take care of it." Simon thanked her and went back to his room. When they got back to the room, Dick was still very worried and said, "Do you think he really won't wake up?" "I'm not sure, but he just said to do whatever we like as long as he's asleep," Simon replied. Suddenly, he came up with an idea. Suddenly, the books fell down with a loud noise that startled Simon as well. It turned out that Dick wanted to see if it was true what Kajan had said before, and at this time Kajan was still sleeping very deeply before the noise just now. Then suddenly Dick excitedly invited Simon to take a shower because he had seen the bathroom when he went up to the second floor. "Check it out," he said. Simon also realized he needed a shower after the exhausting days that had ended. Stepping out of the bathroom, dude was full of life. Happiness clearly showed on his face. "Wow, I love it so much, I can tell. My gosh, I've never seen anyone so floored by a simple shower stall. Did you live deep in the mountains or something?" On the way back to the room, Dick wiped his hair while walking and talking, and Simon also answered honestly, "Something like that." Dick continued to tell the story of what happened earlier in the bathroom. "But still, could you not go wow, wow, when you press the buttons on the shower? The other students are gonna start talking." But the truth was that Simon came from a remote area, so everything was new to him. When he got to the door of the room, Dick explained, "Yeah, you're the talk of this school already for being the special admission #1, and now you'll be called a bumpkin on top of being called a fake." At that moment, Simon realized he had done some pretty embarrassing things. After all, Simon felt that Kizen School was a really wonderful place. Everyone wanted to come here. Sitting down on the bed, Dick casually said, "Of course, whether we can stay here or not depends on our grades." Simon answered, "I heard there are only about 300 students in the second grade." Dick continued to talk. "We still have this many cohorts because we're still in the student protection period. You just wait and see. Half of us will be gone soon." Simon wonders, student protection period. Dick continued to explain that this stage was the beginning and there was not enough data to evaluate the quality of the students. Therefore, the professors could not expel or harm the students according to their wishes at this time. After listening to Dick's explanation, Simon suddenly realized, so they were cutting me slack with everything that happened today? After that period is over, expulsion happens all the time. Expulsion because of underperforming, showing no promise of success, violating the rules, handing in inferior homework, you name it. He was like a professor and encouraged Simon to persevere until the end of the first class. They could find jobs in almost anywhere, so they had to survive until the end and become an official graduate. Finally, he pointed his finger at Simon and concluded with one sentence. Then, well, you become a leader during an era in which whole continents are on the move. Then he lay down and sighed. I think you could become practically anything except for a member of the royal family. Well, actually, a small kingdom might betroth you a princess if you graduate from Kizen. Simon asked him, do you want to become a noble? But he sprang up calmly and replied that, no, there might be advantages to becoming one, but that's not my goal. Suddenly he made an okay sign with his hand like a telescope and aimed it at Simon. Then he realized and said, this means that his goal is money, only money, and Simon also realized that. Suddenly Simon fumbled on his palm and said, so, I'm going to be really busy from now on. Suddenly, a box shot up from under the floor, startling Dick. He exclaimed in astonishment. Whoa! What's that? What is it? What did you just do? Simon held the box with one hand in a cool way and said, it's a subspace. Simon casually replied, it's the skeleton kit for an island ratman. I haven't taken a prep class, so I bought some things to practice. Dick carefully crawled over and asked, we just got out of class. You're studying more? Simon opened the box and answered, yeah, it's just, I don't want to forget everything I felt earlier. Dick continued to ask, so you're going to make it in the right order this time? Simon held up the skull and answered, no, I'm going with my guts again this time. As soon as he finished his sentence, he started to meticulously assemble the bone pieces while Dick sat next to him and watched attentively. Here you go, Simon finished in a flash. Dick realized and said, it's the same with the one you made in class. Simon said, yes, but it can be better. It took me longer, and one leg is wobbly, Dick exclaimed. But you still made it into the same skeleton. I don't think I could do that. Suddenly, Simon stroked the skull's head and said, I'm sorry. Then suddenly he crushed the skeleton. The bones splattered all over the floor before Dick's astonishment. He screamed, well, what? What's wrong? You made it so well. Simon remained silent. Dick still didn't understand what was going on. Yo, Simon. At that moment, Simon recalled the words that the professor had lectured in the previous lesson. Skeletons formed with summoning magic have the tendency to take on their original form. The official name is restoring force, also called the attraction in the field. Suddenly he realized something and closed his eyes to focus. He started to feel the rune and remembered the order of the skeleton structure. Simon began to sense all the bones on the floor. Suddenly, the pieces of frost seemed to stir and make rattling, clattering sounds. Then he muttered the spell restore. The skull's eyes suddenly glowed red. All the bones flew past Dick, making him jump in surprise. Finally, he assembled a complete skeleton. Dick looked carefully and then exclaimed that, wow, it's still amazing to see it come together again. How do you pull this off when you didn't even prep for it? At that time, Dick was quite sleepy. As he yawned, he mentioned that it was late and he would go to sleep. Then he also told Simon to get some sleep. But Simon wanted to stay up a little longer to try more, seeing that Dick also went back to bed and said that he would sleep first. Suddenly, Dick spoke up and asked Simon what class they had tomorrow. Simon replied that the class was Darkness Dynamics, all while he was stroking the skeleton. Meanwhile, the skeleton had turned back to look at Simon, and its eyes had changed to a beautiful blue light. Some time passed and Simon was still awake before the yellow light behind him. He said, this time, I'll follow the diagram. Then he fumbled around assembling and muttered to himself, ah, I need to connect it like this for the knees to rotate. This is the ratman's bones, so maybe it would move like a human's if I put it the other way. The result was not as Simon thought. He tried again and again. Then he pulled out the whole notebook to take notes. Just putting the ratman's inverted joint the other way around wouldn't work. In the blink of an eye, the notebook was filled with his analysis. Simon realized the assembly formulas are the standards that necromancers established over a long time. So there must have been numerous trials and errors to get to this point. Like how I am right now, that's what he thinks. Every task has its reason and meaning. Repeating the assembly myself, I realize how great the previous generations of necromancers were. The thoughts in his head grew more and more. I've tried switching number 25 with 31. How is that? He continued to experiment. Uncomfortable, huh? This combination isn't that great, I see. I'll put them back in their places. After trying countless times, he hugged the skeleton to his chest and thought to himself, no matter how reasonable the structure is, there is a more effective arrangement for you to move. He wondered how he could learn quickly. Okay, I should research it more properly. And with that, he shut the notebook. Simon thought of the skeletons that father used to help the people in the field, and the skeletons that Lorraine used to take control over the gangs. He looked at the skeleton deep in the eye socket and saw the characteristic blue light of his. He thought to himself, what do I lack compared to them? The more you think, the more eager you are to wait for the next class tomorrow. The next morning, the class started with the introduction of the professor. The darkness serves as the foundation of a necromancer. Eric Ora, professor of darkness dynamics for Class A, said, I can't stress enough how important darkness is in dynamics. While the class was going on, Simon was very focused on the professor's lecture, but Dick was nodding off like he didn't get enough sleep. The origin of the rune words goes back to the eternally burning torch of the Temple of Del. At first, no one questioned why the torch didn't go out. Why? Because people then deemed doubting God was blasphemous in itself. One day they noticed that the ashes from the torch resembled letters, and they were astonished by the fact that mere letters were behind a miracle like the burning torch. While Simon was engrossed in the story behind the origin of rune words, Dick was completely dozing off and not listening to the lecture. And the sorcerers and necromancers who discovered the ancient rune words made countless improvements to create the modern rune of today. The rune words after such improvements are as follows, and these two magic circles are examples of using the improved rune words. The professor taught and analyzed at the same time. What Professor Eric taught was very captivating, making everyone in the class listen attentively and take notes. After finishing the lecture, the professor put down the chalk and said, That's it for today's lecture, and I have an assignment for you to complete by the next class. Use one of the magic circles that we learned in class as an example, which can't be activated, and provide the ways to modify it, the calculation, and the formula you've used to make it work. All right, and 3 students that I call on during the next class will make a presentation on their assignment. The scene changes to the campus. The young man Dick complains that the last lesson was very hard. It had too many formulas that he could not remember, but Simon found it quite interesting. He slightly looks up to the sky and gently answers, I didn't understand more than half of it, but I liked how he described everything one by one from the principles. Dick heard Simon answer, then immediately teasing him about what happened in the bathhouse this morning. Even this morning, you were going on and on about the soap in the bathhouse. He stated that Simon always liked things related to Kizen. Simon felt embarrassed, so he smashed Dick really hard on his back. Under a peacefully scenery, Dick asked Simon about their next class. Simon then replied that they will have magical combat next. Hey, everyone, look over there. The girl with green hairs and glasses gathered all of everyone's attention onto one place. From far away, there was something coming, making dust flies in a haze. The ground shook violently, and the huge feet of dozens of hippos appeared, rushing towards them. In just a blink of an eye, the students were surrounded by the hippos. They started to panic and screams, What is going on? Suddenly, a laugh echoed at them. Ha ha, welcome, new students. Professor Hong Peng will be holding her class today at Rogue Mountain. Now everyone get on the hippos. Suddenly, Dick turned and whispered at Simon, not surprising, actually. The magical combat professor is a famous oddball in Kizen. I heard she camps in different part of Rogue Mountain. Simon replied silently, Really? After that, someone asked, Hey you're really telling us to get on that? An arrogant gray-haired man pointed at the man standing on the back of a hippo and shouted angrily, You have to put on a rug or something on that beasts for us to get on it. The man just said, Gosh, but a strong dark aura surrounded him. Suddenly he jumped into the air, surprising the arrogant man. This was a deserved punishment for a rude and disrespectful guy in front of his senior. He got a direct hit so hard that he screamed in pain. "What do you think you're doing? A mere servant like you can't stand in our way. We're Kizen students. How insolent. Probably only spoiled rich kids could say such things." The man just lowered his head and asked again, "A servant?" The man glared coldly and snapped, "How come the new students these days are so clueless? You should call me a TA, not a servant." The students were stunned. It turned out that the man was the tutor assistant of the next class. The unlucky guy who got beaten just realized that he had done some stupid things and quickly apologized in front of the tutor assistant's questioning. Anything else? While the students were all worried, Dick was smug and mocked about the nobles, and he said only Simon was an exception amongst them. "Well, we're a little bit behind schedule. Everyone get on the hippos," the tutor assistant announced to the students. "One hippo can hold up to 3 students." Hearing so, Dick and Simon quickly hopped on the hippo. Dick complained, "Geez, the hippo is so big that it's hard to climb up." Meanwhile, Simon noticed that the pink-haired girl at the back of the hippo was trying to climb up, but seemed like she can't. Simon looked at the girl. She was a little bit shy, so he friendly reached out a hand and asked, "Do you need help?" She then used her tiny hand to grab Simon's hand and thanks him for the help. The petite girl was gently lifted up by Simon, making her feel shied. After everything was settled, the tutor assistant shouted, "Hold on tight, let's go." The whole herd of hippos roared in unison when they received the order, and then they dashed away very fast. The pink-haired girl screamed in fear. Maybe this was the first time she experienced this, while Simon was being hit by her cute hair on his face. The other students also couldn't avoid that situation. Most of them screamed in fear. The TA shouted at them, "Overcome it with strong will. This is also part of the training." Some of them were really trying their best to hold on to the hippo. In front of the panic of the students, the assistant teacher raised his thumb and smiled brightly and said, "If you fall off now, you'd get trampled by the hippos and die, right?" After hearing that from TA, the students who were already scared became even more terrified. And then the sounds of dreadful screams began to echo everywhere.